The students lined up on the dock, the smell of salty sea in the air mixed with a strange aura of tension and excitement flowed like the water lapping at the shoreline. All of the students from one particular non-human school, in this case St. Alicia's Girls' Academy, including all 5 members of the staff, were gathered here in front of the imposing figure of one of humanity's most treasured active historical artifacts, still functional after all these years. Wolf girls, elves, cat girls, tieflings, several fae, and even an angel stood nervously in front of the imposing beast that gently bobbed in the harbor. The girls, especially their teachers, were more nervous about the nearby crowd that had gathered nearby on an opposing dock full of young and excited fans. Sitting before them, the legendary steel hull of the USS Iowa, still relatively unchanged from her centuries of service, proudly waiting for her annual historical parade. They had walked in from being dragged out of classes and put on the bus to come here straight from school. They waited patiently to find out what was going on. The school principal, the dean, all 3 teachers, and the school nurse were also present, along with the 4th teacher who had long since gone on board the massive steel beast shortly after they arrived. After what seemed an eternity, their eccentric but very excited teacher, Mr. Burton, appeared on deck and hastily made his way back to the students. He was wearing a new uniform that frightened some of the students. It was his old service uniform from his days in the current Navy as a gunnery sergeant. He caught his breath and approached. By this point, the crowd had noticed the gaggle of lovely ladies standing around on the harbor and were now more concerned about them than the ship, something the teachers were not appreciating.
"It's all ready to go!"
"Everyone, get on board," he excitedly said and gestured for everyone to move. The students and teachers reluctantly got on board the front gangplank, sitting just behind the front deck gun, and a strange, excited roar came from the crowd at the sight. The girls all filtered aboard and were very much taken aback by the sight of the ship's massive front cannons, which they had to stand directly underneath in order to be spoken to. After all the students and faculty were in place, the ship crew stood around them and stood to attention. "Tension on deck!" the first officer yelled. The men all stood firm and saluted as a number of older men, very clearly too old to serve, carefully made their way on board too. A selection of Navy men in wheelchairs, walking frames, canes, and other things being carefully brought on board by other Navy officers. Behind them, 2 mid-aged gents, one wearing the black and silver uniform of the modern Navy, and the other wearing the blue and black uniform of the old Navy, both of which were admirals. The girls were all told to stay where they were and keep quiet as the 2 admirals approached the side deck. Various drones and camera systems were turned on and allowed to start rolling. The current Space Navy admiral took to a podium mounted on the front deck and started to talk into a microphone towards the gathered crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen of our proud nation, welcome one and welcome all to this historic event." His voice echoed across the harbor, followed by a resounding cheer of approval from the crowd. On this day, 400 years ago, we celebrated the official launch of the USS Iowa, a true legend in not only American but Terran history as a whole. Today marks the 400th anniversary of the longest-serving active military ship in human history, next to her sister ship, which will also be joining us for this momentous occasion. The crowd on the harbor cheered with glee as the ship's engine started up. The girls, all very much above normal human senses, could feel the ship's massive, ancient diesel engines rumble to life underneath them. They all tried to make themselves slightly smaller, as they all collectively realized they were invited here at a truly important moment. All the girls and even their teachers all felt somewhat small right then. "We have veterans of over 4 centuries of service on this very ship, in person and in spirit with us today. And as part of the Terran Reef Expansion Project, for the first time in over 100 years, the Iowa will be performing active battle movements alongside her sister ship. We will be using this opportunity not only to help our great cradle to heal by creating an artificial reef, but also to remember the sacrifices we made to get to where we are today. Ladies and gentlemen, returned from her service in the outer regions, I present to you the UNSMC Montana," he said. The sudden roar of starship propulsion engines filled the air with a dull rumble, followed by a high-pitched whine as a huge starship suddenly appeared in the air above the crowd. The crowd's cheers of celebration almost overshadowed those of its engines. The girls all gasped, immediately recognizing the very same ship that was one of many thousands that took them off their collapsing home world. Though most of the girls here were all very young children or even infants at the time, all of them very quickly recognized the distinctive echoing scream of the starship's engines. The UNSMC Montana, the spiritual successor of the USS Iowa, was a ship that looked similar to a UNSC Paris-class frigate from Halo, only with smoother hull shape and fatter bridge section, and significantly bulkier engines. The Montana also had double the firepower of its older sister and was 3 times her size. The older teachers all teared up at the sights and sounds of their savior. The first time any non-human had ever seen the Montana-class starships in almost 2 decades. A number of other ships, small Pickett-class and destroyer-class warships, also appeared, half of which were oceanic vessels, the other half being spacefaring vessels, all fitted and painted with yellow, red, and silver, marking civilian use. The students all correctly surmised that these ships would be the marshal service for the local fleet during the event. The Iowa's horn sounded, to a resounding cheer from the crowd as the ship began to move to the speakers blaring the Star-Spangled Banner. All officers who weren't needed for movement were out on the deck, all at full salute as the ship trundled her way out of the dock and into the harbor. With the resounding fanfare of its cheering crowd, the ship made its way out into open waters, quickly followed by a small armada of ships of every kind, including a now legendary ocean liner that had been in service for over 100 years. High above them, a full armada of Terran starships sat quietly in low orbit, watching proceedings and carrying out their own celebrations. The students and faculty just stood quietly and waited. The admirals dismissed everyone to stations as the national anthem finally ended. 4 men appeared from inside the ship and stood in front of the class. The admiral dismissed himself to the bridge. The 4 men saluted the group of ladies and stood to attention. Finally, Mr. Burton quickly followed and likewise stood to attention with a big smile on his face. He had a clipboard with him and waited. "Hello, ladies. Just in time for a truly historic event, huh? You look excited." "Now, let me see," Mr. Burton said as he looked at the clipboard. "Jessica, Sadie, Juniper, Marie, Alessa, and Olivia. Come hither, if you please," he said. The 6 students stepped forward. Jessica was the only angel in the class, her silver wings fluttering gently in the breeze. Sadie, Juniper, and Marie were elves, Alessa was a cat girl, and Olivia was a wolf girl. "You 6 are the best performing students in the school. As a consequence, you have earned the opportunity to get a better feel for this magnificent beast. So will be joining me on a private tour of the ship and participate in the upcoming festivities. As for everyone else, this is Staff Sergeant Mathis, Gunnery Sergeant Marcos, Corporal Winters, and Lieutenant Andrews. They will provide you all with a guided tour of the ship before you are all huddled into a transport and taken to that cruise ship over there to watch the upcoming display. This is a reward for your excellent behavior over the last 2 years, so do not waste it," he said. They all looked at each other, the anxiety they had been feeling thus far quickly dissipating. The Iowa's horn sounded again as she reached her cruising speed of 33 knots, and the surprisingly calm waters of the Pacific Ocean made the journey so much more enjoyable. The students were assigned to their guides and carefully filtered through the ship and given a basic guided tour of the entire ship, stern to aft, and allowed to take a good look around the ancient warship. Mr. Burton came to the ship's bell with his group of 6 students, tailed by the Admiral of the Ocean Navy, who was casually sipping a cola. The USS Iowa, built during the early years of World War II and decommissioned for the first time in March 1949. She earned the nicknames of the Gray Ghost, the Big Stick, and the Battleship of Presidents during her service. She was fully decommissioned in October 1990 and served as a museum ship in Los Angeles until she was put back into active service during the Mars Lunar Cold War as a patrol craft as an emergency measure. Since then, she has been maintained as a full active service ship for the Surface Navy alongside her continuing role as a ceremonial ship. Mr. Burton had their full attention as he explained the ship's history. Early on in the Earth-Lunar Cold War between the Lunarian separatist movement and the Terran Confederacy, the USS Iowa, alongside more modern variants of warships, were stationed along the east coast near Washington when they encountered a Lunarian infiltration frigate off the coast. The USS Iowa is the only vessel recorded to have a single starship kill. This ship blew up one of those ships, Mr. Burton said, gesturing to one of the smaller star frigates nearby. The girls all blinked in surprise. This thing? This ancient warship from a bygone era killed a modern spaceship? Sadie raised a hand. How? Ooh, I was hoping you'd ask that. The Iowa was on defense maneuvers on the East Coast on the morning of April 14, 2098, during the height of the Lunar Cold War. A Lunarian separatist infiltration frigate was attempting to use cloaking tech in a nighttime raid to kidnap some senators and politicians. The Iowa spotted them, and after target confirmation, the Iowa's captain made the snap decision to defend her patrol route. She pulled hard to starboard, nearly colliding with the TFN Roosevelt in the process, one of her escort destroyers, and loosed a full broadside on the starship, which was over 15 miles away. 8 of the 9 shells hit their target, 2 of which were enough to cause crippling damage. The ship's reactor was hit, went critical, and in order to prevent a more egregious disaster than their attempted attack, they shut the ship down, only to receive 3 more shells to the forward section and put the infiltration frigate down for good. No massive boom, but the ship's hulk did land on the shoreline where a heavy battleship of the active Terran Navy appeared and secured the area. The Iowa was consequently, after investigation of course, credited with the first and to date only ocean-to-space ship-to-ship kill. The result was the end of the Lunarian separatist movement, of course, Mr. Burton said. God, that was funny. Imagine the best tech for a cloaked frigate in space, and they got their asses beat by a World War II museum ship. The humiliation of the loss by itself should have been enough to make the Lunars think a bit about their leadership, the Admiral said with a chuckle. Indeed it was. The loss of the ship and the means of its destruction was enough to bring separatist leaders to the negotiating table. Then politics happened, and we don't need to care about that now. A lesson for another day. Now, with history down, let's go to the engine room, Mr. Burton said. The group made their way towards the rear of the ship, going down several flights of stairs. All the girls were given ear protectors from the officers on station and allowed to enter the room. Mr. Burton calmly explained with a raised voice above the huge rumble the engine was causing, the Admiral just standing by to watch as he drank his cola. Mr. Burton used a diagram he was carrying to show the girls how the engine worked and how much power it produced. All to 12,000 ship horsepower needed to move the 57,000 tons of warship. Mr. Burton took the girls upstairs to the mess hall, where everyone grabbed a nice cup of tea to warm themselves up and then headed up into the aft turret to be shown how the battleship guns work. Now, owing to the fact you are all the best and brightest, you all have done your homework. Now we are in the big stick part of the big stick. Who can tell me what caliber this ship uses? Mr. Burton asked. Jessica quickly shot her hand up and smiled. 16-inch 50 Mark II guns, sir? Correct. Now, who can give me the exact measurements of the barrel? He asked. Marie's hand shot up. It's 50 calibers long, meaning 50 times its bore diameter, which means from chamber to muzzle it's 66.7 feet long. Each gun is, without breach, 108 tons, she said. Correct. Now, who knows what the muzzle velocity is for this gun? He asked. Olivia raised her hand. If I remember correctly, the big gun shoots at 2,500 feet per second if it's an armor-piercing shell, she replied with a smile. Correct. Well done. Now, final question. Here's the hard part. Each of you take a notepad and calculate the approximate range of an AP shell based on muzzle velocity, he said, handing each of them a notepad. It didn't take them long to get an answer, and predictably each one got it right. The Admiral and Mr. Burton didn't seem too surprised and carried on. Just then, a strange humanoid robot appeared from the lower deck hatch, carrying targeting data on a clipboard.
Sir!
"Hello, sir!" the robot yelled at his superior officer as he climbed into the room, the sight taking the girls by surprise. "Carry on, Sergeant, no need for formalities," the Admiral said. The robot nodded and resumed its job, fixing up some of the targeting systems on one of the barrels. The machine was a very human-looking but clearly mechanical robot that moved with a swiftness and smoothness that was in itself very creepy. It looked, for lack of better description, like a synth from the Fallout universe, only more refined and detailed. The girls all stared at it, scared, confused. Mr. Burton noticed when he tried to carry on with the lesson but was ignored. "What are you—" "Oh, damn it, I forgot."
Girls!
He clapped, snapping them out of it. "I completely forgot you ladies have never met a simulant before, have you? Well, ladies, this is Gunnery Sergeant Matthew Jackson. I was human once. Then my everything went boom. Then I was in a jar. Now I'm here. I'm cool with it." The mechanical man said casually, his robotics fashioning a mechanical smile before returning to work. "To make it clearer," the Admiral interjected, "we have a program for anyone who volunteers for it to transfer consciousness into mechanical or robotic bodies for those whose real bodies can't function anymore. The simulant is basically a mechanical version of the standard human body. It's a way to stop yourself from dying, at least for a while. Entropy always wins, but at least it gives those like the gunnery sergeant here the better chance to live a full life when the body is just too badly damaged. I swear to God, if we had this tech when Hawking was around, we'd have been in space before the 2030 us." The Admiral grumbled. "Yeah, it's not exactly ethical for some people, but sometimes it's just necessary. Put human brain into robot body. Robot become person. Person lives happy life doing what they want before body failed. It's sort of a last resort kind of thing when all else fails. But if it works, it works. Anyway, back to business. We're almost to our destination. Can any of you ladies tell me what we're about to do exactly?" Mr. Burton asked. They all shared glances and shrugged. "I figured as much. What we're going to do is use the big guns to blow up and sink ships," Mr. Burton gleefully exclaimed as Sergeant Matthew put on a helmet and ear protectors. The ship's horn blew again, and the girls could feel the engine wind down as the ship moved to port to align itself, dropping anchor. To be more precise, this event is twofold. One, celebrating 400 years of history with one of the Iowa's glorious broadsides, followed by the use of derelict craft to create an artificial reef. We get the fun of seeing this glorious beast do its glorious beastly thing, followed by the betterment of the ocean when we create more usable surface material for ocean life to use. Artificial reefs aren't a new thing either. We just figured it would be a whole lot of fun to do it this way." Mr. Burton gleefully bellowed above the noise of the horn. The rest of the girls were ushered out of the ship and onto transports that ferried them to the cruise ship nearby. The 6 that remained behind were given ear protectors and helmets, and made to watch a viewing screen nearby as the ceremony started. The view outside the ship was nothing short of beautiful, as 6 decommissioned cargo freighters, one of which had the hollowed-out shells of car frames and vehicle wrecks covering its surface. 4 ships in the middle formed a square pattern, and 2 larger ships, both heavy cargo freighters, flanked either side of the display. The Iowa had moved into position, and the turret started turning. A full broadside on the larger cargo freighter to the right side of the formation. The Starship, the UNSMC Montana, likewise maneuvered herself to a broadside stance and readied her 18 12-inch guns into firing position. A retinue of Marines in ceremonial uniform stepped out onto the front deck in front of the main deck gun. The veterans and older servicemen stood to salute if they could, and the officers present performed a 21-gun salute with their rifles before some crew emptied some ashes into the water below. The national anthem played again with everyone standing to attention. When the anthem concluded, Matthew quickly grabbed the girls' attention and demonstrated how to operate and load the guns. They didn't have the chance to protest or question this, as they were quickly ushered into position. First, they loaded a Shell Standard He warhead, then sent in 2 sacks of gunpowder for range. Then they were shown how to calculate range, drop, and wind. The girls worked well under duress and quickly figured out the angle they needed to hit. The girls all used various magics and natural abilities to assist with the process, helping load in the heavy shell into the breech with some levitation magic. They were all made to run their calculations 3 times over to make absolutely sure. Then came the order. The 4 ships in the middle were sunk using demolitions and scuttling charges, detonated remotely in a brilliant display. The sergeant yelled at the group, "Ready to fire in 3, 2, 1.
Fire!"
The massive warship released all of its shells within seconds of each other. Alongside the Montana, and with the thunderous roar of cannon fire, the shells streaked towards their targets. The strange mixture of sudden air pressure changes sent a wave of fear and excitement inside the turret, and the girls all squealed in shock at the violent force. It wasn't that much compared to what was happening outside, but it was still intense. The shells streaked through the air, and 10 miles away their targets took a direct hit. The Iowa hit 6 of her 9 shells, 2 falling short and 1 shell flying too far, hitting one of the scuttled ships instead, but it still counted. The Montana loosed all her shells, and due to advanced targeting systems and modern technology, every shell hit its intended target, causing the empty vessel to explode in a fiery display. The demolition crews then set their charges off in a secondary display, and with one beautiful, concerted effort, the Iowa's intended target split in half, flooded, then quickly sank. No further shells were to be fired, so the girls were quickly hurried out of the turret onto the deck to see what was going on. They watched a replay on various monitors of how well they fired. 2 of the shells they fired scored direct hits on the target, setting off one of the scuttling charges at the impact point. They all felt a sense of accomplishment for their task, and also they knew they were guaranteed some extra credit for the good job. The ceremony quickly wrapped up, and the ship returned to a relaxed station as the crew started a barbecue on the deck. It was definitely a memorable day.